But yeah, I did definitely church music. I think a lot of that stuff, like church music, gospel, like I call it gospel, like gospel, blues, and country. I mean, they all kind of came about, together. I think that they were all very similar to each other. The three things of those are that's the trinity of good music.
Growing up, can you pinpoint a moment when you knew that music was something you wanted to pursue more as a career option?
I didn't think it was possible to pursue it as a career option. For a while, I just thought that I knew I loved it. I mean, I was obsessed from as soon as I was able to, you know, make decisions on my own. Like I would make mixtapes from radio. I would just sit and listen and wait for my favorite song, make cassette recordings, and you know, I as soon as I got a guitar, it was just the same obsession. Just got kind of, transferred over to try to learn and writing songs and all that just kind of developed over the course of being, a teenager. And then I started getting like recruiters and scouts and things like that that were like coming to my shows. And I think that that's when I realized like, hey, maybe I could do this. Like, 'cause these label A&R guys and stuff like that were kind of, in my ear at like 18. So it started feeling like maybe I could do this.
So you got your first guitar, I think, about the age of 13. Do you still have it?
I do. Yep. I'll never get rid of it, even though
Yeah.
it's really a piece of junk. but I'll never get rid of it.
No, it's that sentimental value for sure.
Oh yeah, I mean, you can never replace that. Like no matter how much money you have, like that's the kind of thing you can't replace.
Yeah. I'll talk about your songwriting a little bit and the process involved. I spoke to someone recently who described songwriting as a bit like fishing. You've got to have your line in the water all the time. You've got to be patient. Occasionally, you might pull out an old boot or a license plate or something, but you've got to keep the line in there to get that prize catch. Is that pretty well how it works for you?
I think that's totally true. I think
Yeah.
it's totally you're dead on. But that's a great analogy. Um, I don't like forced ideas. I don't like forced songs. I have a pretty strong like I have a strong sense of what I like and what I don't, what I feel comfortable with. When I write a song, I can usually there's something in me that's like feels incongruent or harmonious with a certain thing, and I'm like I either know that it's resonating or it's not.
Mm.
So I try to use that barometer when I'm writing and just try and start from pure inspiration, whether it be a lyric or a guitar part, like a riff, um, or a melody. But once I have that sort of initial inspiration, I try to use that barometer to only let things come out that are kind of, congruent with that initial inspiration. And sometimes the initial inspiration, I'll write an entire song in one sitting. That's a blessing when that happens.
Mm.
But a lot of times it's just like a verse and a chorus, and then I have to go back and really use discipline to finish an idea. And in that practice and in that discipline, that's where the like really being attuned to your inner sort of barometer, it comes into play. And then once the song's done, you have to live with it. And over the course of a couple months, usually it's like you can tell if it's got legs, or if it's just kind of like if it was just like a flash in the pan feeling, like
Mm.
after some time, I usually know if it's good or bad. And I try my best to just only release good stuff. Like I don't really I don't use filler. I try to
Yeah.
make sure everything I put out there is legit.
And you've pretty much stuck to the same method of songwriting through the years. It hasn't varied much.
Not really. No, it hasn't really varied much. I mean, I've tried to I've tried to get into like Nashville songwriting. When I lived in Nashville for a couple years, and then even times before that, I would go to writing sessions. When I was in town, I would do like 5 or 10 sessions in a week, and I just learned really quickly that that's not my style of writing. I definitely am more of an inspired kind of. If I don't feel inspired, I just don't write. So I'm always around instruments, and I live in a studio, so I'm always around instruments and musicians. And so anytime something strikes me, like I'll get up out of bed in the middle of the night and make a voice memo on my phone.
Mm.
Or if I'm driving down the street, I'll take out the voice memo and take down the idea, to save it for later, because I definitely realize when those moments happen that if you don't document it, you're liable to forget it.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the worst.
Phones have become like a songwriter's best friend, haven't they?
In some sense, yeah, and then in others, it's like it's harder because it's like a distraction,
True.
But in a lot of ways, it is pretty helpful to be able to immediately record, an idea no matter where you are.
Back through the years, and even in the early days, you landed some big name support gigs, opening for the likes of AC/DC, Deep Purple, Black Crowes, Leonard Skinner. So I imagine some of those would have been big stadium shows amongst them. Apart from the obvious exposure that it gave you, what else did you take out of those experiences as a young performer coming through?
I think a lot of that stuff, it's like now that I'm 15 years in, and a lot of that stuff happened 10 years ago. A lot of that was I was learning things like subconsciously, and I really put the, the tail on the donkey like later. Like I think I was in such a party mode when I was young, when I was in the early days of playing, that I definitely was picking things up, but a lot of the lessons that I should have been picking up, like I think I picked up later, when I was like thinking about how these guys were running a shop, like running a big operation like these guys do. I mean, these big tours like that, there's so many moving parts, and it's really amazing that you can put all those people in one place at the same time, and just the fact that stuff even is possible with a bunch of musicians is phenomenal. But I think, just looking at it right now, thinking about what I've learned from them is, it's not as the rock and roll life, like what I thought it was then, is much different than what it really is. I mean, the amount of work that it takes, and the amount of just being able to stay healthy and together, for a 2-month tour. It's really, I mean, you have to be almost like a triathlete or something to be able to manage that, and just to kind of play consistently every night. It's phenomenal to see these guys do that. So I think, as far as there's so many things I could say, and I think honestly, if you were to be able to like ask me specifically, like, what did you learn from this tour, I could pinpoint things from each band. I think each of those tours I learned something different, and picked up different things from all these different people in a way.
Yeah. Now, I don't want to go too far into this because I'm sure you're probably over it by now, but the band name Northern Lights, you had some legal issues there that really put a halt to things there for a while for you. What actually happened?
Well, it's just, that's something that I figured out. There's a lot of sharks out there, man. And I mean, as I've gotten older, I've realized that, because I really have the purest intentions with what I do. I mean, I'm really just kind of naive in that way, where I'm just like, I really don't care about trying to like, win, or I'm not competitive in that way. I'm just kind of like, I just want to be happy and live my life and do my stuff. And I never really think like, oh, there's people out there that are trying to like take advantage, and this was the case. Essentially what happened was I started the band. We started kind of getting some momentum and, selling records, and it was a totally grassroots independent thing. Like we just printed up records in Texas, and like, wow, these things are selling and the radio stations are playing it. And we didn't have any big major backing or any money behind us. It was actually just legitimately organic. And I guess some guy up in Minnesota, or I think he's in Minneapolis or somewhere around there, he heard about us and he trademarked the name before we did. And essentially once he had trademarked it, he sent us a cease and desist. And I was like 23, 24. I didn't know anything about legal stuff, and I didn't have the best counsel. And so we essentially just were like, okay, well, what do we need to do to keep it? We just kind of accepted what he did. And so he ends up hitting us for like $3,000 a year. And we were like, all right, that's feasible. We'll pay you. And then after a certain period, I think it was like 5 years, he was like, it's going to be $50,000 now. And he wanted us to just pay him $50,000. And we were like, we don't have $50,000. There's nothing we can do about this. So we essentially rolled over. We didn't even try to fight it. We just were like, okay, well, I guess we lose this name. And so cut to 5 years after that. So it's been about 10 years, since the beginning of the band, maybe even 12. I'm playing a show, and after the show, a gentleman comes up to me, and he says, hey, I want to help you get your name, the Northern Lights, back. I heard your story, and I want to help you guys get this name back. I'm a lawyer. And I just was like, I kind of took it like, okay, this is just like some guys had a couple drinks at the show. He's feeling good. Like he's just, he's just talking big because his pretty wife is like standing there. And he like, I give him my email and I'm like, all right, well, let's just see what happens. 2 weeks later, we're on the phone. He says, okay, I've got my plan of attack. I'm going to go to this guy. And basically found out that the guy had trademarked the name right around the time that the band had started, and that he was a trademark shark that just finds people online that come up with things and trademarks it before they.
Okay.
And then he kind of hits them up for money. And so my guy, essentially, who's become a very close friend of mine, he went and just was like, hey, we're going to fight you in court. It's going to cost a lot of money. Like, I'm not going to give up. And the guy gave up, and he gave us the name back.
Wow.
Isn't that crazy? So
that is crazy, yeah.
I just, I kind of learned, like I said, the hard way, that there's just so many people out there. For all the good people, there's also bad people, and there's people that just try to take advantage of people, and they look for susceptible people. And I was young and wasn't aware, so learned my lesson on that one.
That's quite a story. Hey, your music has so many styles, so many elements to it, and it probably makes it difficult for some people, critics who like to categorize and pigeonhole music. If you walk into a record store, where would you like to see your music filed away?
I consider myself to be a rock artist at the end of the day. I think of myself as an indie rocker, even though really I have a lot of blues and kind of classic sounding music. But my mentality is very independent minded, DIY. I do a lot of my own recordings. I do a lot of my own everything. I'm very a very DIY mindset.
Mm.
But at the end of the day, I'm very guitar oriented. That's very that's kind of the common thread through most of my songs and music is guitar styles and the sort of bedrock that the guitar plays in my music. But I don't really I think you're right about that. I don't really know how people would categorize it because it is very all over the place. I mean, one moment we'll be playing full throttle rock and roll, and the next we're playing a quiet Pink Floyd ballad.
Mm.
And then there's just sort of like songwriting elements, so there's a lot of different elements in there. But I think, when you really look at it, especially being from Australia, like it's pretty standard American rock and roll, American influenced blues rock and roll. I mean, the country side of it, like we talked about in the beginning, it's like the country side of it, the gospel side of it, and the blues side of it. They're really, those three things are kind of the things that I draw from most of the time. And so it can be anywhere from, one song might have more of this than that. They've all kind of got somewhere in those three, blues, country, and gospel. There's usually some common thread there.
Mm. You had some brief major label experience with Atlantic. How do you look back on that time now?
Well, now that it's done, I have so many mixed feelings about it. Like it was a beautiful time, and it was a thrill. It was a thrilling time. It was frustrating, and it was it just happened so fast that it was like really difficult to, having no experience with something like that. It was hard to know the right moves to make, and it was hard to navigate those times because I didn't really know. And being such a strong-willed DIY kind of person, I have a hard time sometimes, like being told what to do. Like I definitely have authority issues as just like my personality. I'm very independent minded. So it was hard to be corralled. It was hard to be managed and sort of basically lose control of my own destiny in some senses. It was hard to kind of go along with that. And so, there's things that I would do differently if I was going to do it again. On the other hand, when I think about all the positives, just how far the label was able to push the music and get it out there more than I, could ever imagine it getting out there. I mean, they really have a way of pushing music and marketing music. And so in that sense, I mean, it was just like a thrill to watch, and to see and to be a part of a company like Atlantic, which, has a history of bands like Led Zeppelin and Ray Charles and things like that, where, being in New York City at the office, it was thrilling. And I look back at, with a lot of love and it was fun, but there's lessons learned. I mean, would I do it again? Probably. Would I do it differently? Most certainly. But it's, but it's tricky. I mean, it's really big business. And when you think about a publicly traded company, I mean, the company's reporting to thousands of stockholders. And so their main objective is making money. And my main objective is to make art. And so I think that the two can go hand in hand. But if I was trying to just, live my life to make money, I would have gone into business and not gone into art. I kind of see things differently. And so I don't know if it's one of those things where I'm like, I don't know if really at the end of the day, we're really the same kinds of like people at the end of the day. Like, I think that our objectives are a little different. So
I imagine going independent again would have been almost a liberating experience for you.
No doubt. I mean,
Yeah.
it's extremely, no doubt that it was, I'm free to do whatever I want anytime. Um, on the other hand, it's like you're when you're trying to promote yourself and you have nobody really backing you up with money to get publicity or money to get radio promotion, you're kind of, I thought to myself, because like I said, I'm kind of naive and I have this sort of pure-hearted approach to everything that I do. It's like I thought like the cream rises to the top. Like you make good music and you make great art and it will rise to the top because of the nature of like just the best thing always wins. But as I've kind of done this for now, 7 or 8 years independently, I'm like, I don't necessarily believe that anymore. I think that it's really, really hard to cut through the noise and without having the backing and the push and the machine behind you, it's really hard to cut through. I mean, Spotify is owned by the labels. So, when you talk about trying to push to the front of Spotify, I mean, there's nothing there that's saying, hey, we're going to push an independent artist. Like they're in cahoots with each other, the labels and Spotify. So
Yeah.
and it's in a sense, it's not like I'm not bitter about it, but it's just kind of like, like I said, our objectives are a little bit different. I come from a background of, my dad was a vice president of a company, publicly traded company, and so we grew up pretty nice, in a sense, and my dad's objective was to make money, and he did well. He was a successful guy, and I kind of was, when I was choosing what I was doing with my life at college age, I was like, I don't really care so much about making money. Like I want to look back and look at what I did in this life and be like able to really feel like I really did something. And so, if like I said, if I wanted to make money, I would have gone to school for finance and gone into some sort of business banking or something like that. But I kind of chose the alternate path because I wanted to, write about things, and I wanted to sort of experience this sort of life. And so it is what it is. Like, I think that that kind of comes with the path of what I chose of being sort of independent and having to kind of struggle and it's always amazing. Like when you reached out, I was like, it makes me feel good. It's like, how did you hear about it? Because I know that there's not really many people out there pushing it. So it's like, you had to have organically heard about it, which in my opinion is the best way to hear about music. Yeah. But it's, I've been lucky, man, because I can support myself with the life I've built. And so I'm able to do what I want to do and kind of answer to just the fans, really. And that's kind of nice. But at the same time, trust me, man, I think about how it felt to have Warner Brothers pushing the music. It was, I mean, it was overnight, just like how fast they can blow up a band,
Now, you released an EP late last year. Is that a precursor to a new full-length album?
Yeah, essentially, I've had a full record made, and once COVID hit, I just decided to kind of hold off on releasing everything at once and just started focusing more on releasing singles with video content. And so I've gotten 5 songs out from that record, and there's 5 more to come. And those songs they've been getting out there a little bit.
Mm. So a few years back to your last full-length album, Holy Smokes, and I guess listening through that album is probably your most personal collection of songs to date. Would that be a fair comment?
Yeah, that was a very important album to me for sure. I had to fight. I definitely had to fight to get that album out there.
Was it, I guess, looking back, was it a healing experience for you writing those songs?
Well, a lot of those songs were songs that I wrote while I was on Atlantic and Warner Brothers that they just rejected, and so I'd already had most of them written and stuff. It was more sort of like um, the actual recording them and releasing them that was the therapy. That was the therapy. That was the release in multiple senses. It was like, I got the songs out there, and I would say that the newer songs that I'm releasing now, those are the ones that are kind of, being totally sort of free of all that stuff. I feel like I'm kind of getting into this phase now of probably going to be the best stuff that I've made, as far as just being mature, having my head wrapped around the whole process of
Mm.
writing and recording, and just getting into a comfortable place and being able to sort of do that without not really learning. I'm still learning stuff all the time, but I understand the process. Whereas, those first couple records, with Holy Smokes included, I was still learning a lot with each of those things, and getting more affluent and speaking the language of studio language. So I feel like I'm pretty, now that these new songs are coming out, it's like these are songs that I feel like are pretty much, maybe you always feel this way. Maybe
Mm.
5 years from now, I'll look back and think, but I actually feel like I've gotten to where I can, like it's like when in the Matrix, when Neo like learns how to like, work in the Matrix. He like goes in there and he can like do all these moves and stuff. It's like I feel like I figured out how to like operate and breathe and live in the this culture and this day and age, and so yeah, I don't know, but holy smokes, man, that album, I really it was a labor. It was a lot of labor to get that done. It took a lot of work and a lot of time, and yeah, I feel like still I can still listen to it and not cringe. You know what I mean? Like I can listen to it and go, I like this.
Hmm.
Like there's when you hand your record to somebody, you can tell how you feel about it, uh, in a sort of subconscious way when you make excuses. If you hand it and you're like, well, we didn't know like what about this, we didn't have the budget for this, but like it's when you start throwing out those precursor excuses, it's like that's kind of what I'm talking. That was my first thing that I was like, I'm handing it out and going like, I really love this. Like
Mm.
no, there's no precursor. It's just like there you go. Um, and so in a sense, that's a really good feeling to kind of still have that feeling about it.
I love the video you did recently for Moon and Stars. Looked like quite the production. Tell us about that one.
Yeah. So like I was saying, during COVID, I started kind of diving into video production. I'd never really thought too much about the medium, outside of just loving music videos as a kid and loving movies and television as an art form. And so I sort of, got a camera, just like a Canon, like 5D, which is something that a lot of photographers know about. Got a nice lens, and I just started kind of filming stuff myself around the house, because I mean we're basically locked down. And as a touring musician, I'm like, well, I got to fill my time up with some stuff. So I started diving into that medium, and essentially finding that I really loved like the stories that you could tell through videos, and matching that with music. And so I made a couple videos, one for this song called Underground Forever, um, another for a song called Mr. Resistor, another one for a song called Old Friend. And those three were all pretty DIY. Like I did those on my own. I hired an editor to help me kind of compile everything. And I was like, all right, this is cool, but I still hadn't ventured into a big studio production. And I met this guy, Aaron Brown. he owns a production company in Austin, and they are experts in making films, commercials, and they have all the gear and they have all the know-how. Aaron and I started kind of spitballing, just having creative conversations, and at a little bar out, it's a little roadhouse bar in the backyard of my house, and we're talking, and I'm just like, hey, come over and I'll show you the song. And so I played him the song, and he was just like, I have to make this video for you. Like this is one of the best songs I've heard in a long time. Like, he's like, I want to help you make this video. And I was like, okay, it sounds like kind of an ordeal. Like, this is going to be a big video, like to, bring a Corvette into a studio with green screen and then sort of doing all the special effects. I was like, this is going to be a big deal, but he was confident that we could do it. And so we went for it, and it really was a big undertaking. I mean, it took us 6 months to make that video.
Wow.
I learned so much about video production through that process, where I just have a whole new respect for filmmakers and all the different technicians that work on films. It's such an arduous job. Like it's phenomenal what you can project visually, especially when you have a song behind it. But yeah, it was a major undertaking, and there were times where I was pulling my hair out, really frustrated. And then there were times where I was, like after it's done, where I just sit and watch it and think to myself, like, I can't believe we made this. We made this come to life, and totally independently. Like, that I'm super proud of it, is what I'm trying to say.
Yes, you should be, yeah, for sure. I've just released a mighty version of Magic Sam's Boogie, recorded live at Arlen Studios. There's quite a history in those studios, isn't there?
Yeah, it's unbelievable. It's well, anybody that knows Austin, Texas, they know that it's the home of Willie Nelson, and Willie Nelson obviously is just one of the most amazing country artists of all time, and he's really responsible for helping make the music scene what it is in Austin. I mean, when he moved here from Nashville in the 70s and brought Waylon Jennings with him and kind of helped make it a legitimate town for music, he started building out his own studio called Pedernales, where essentially, long story short, Arlen is made up of a lot of the gear from Pedernales. So they have a lot of the same, the console, a lot of the same microphones, and they basically just kind of combined it all at Arlen. And so you've got the history of Willie Nelson, which you can't even really say enough about. But then you've got guys like Gary Clark Jr., Charlie Sexton. The list goes on. There's so many great artists that have recorded there. And essentially, I was playing a private party there for an alcohol brand, a Christmas party. And I thought to myself, like, why don't we multi-track this show, record it, and while we're at it, with bringing a video operator. And so we did, and that track was one that we'd been sort of playing in shows. It's more of a jam than anything.
Yeah.
And it's not even really a traditional song at all. And everybody just kind of kept reacting positively, and like they loved it. So we just decided to release it as a live studio version of it, and it seems to be getting a good response. I have a hard time gauging that, but it does seem to be doing well.
So we like to see more tracks out of those sessions, or out of that session?
No, I don't think so. No, mainly because the version that you see, if you look up that video and that version, we recorded that during sound check, and we really only focused on that. And then once we played the show, it was kind of like the sound wasn't as good. It was loud and there were people kind of in the room, and it wasn't really keeper material. I mean, I have all of it, and maybe one day it'll come out, but being like kind of perfectionist that I am, it might not. You know, we just because we've kind of focused on getting that Magic Sam's boogie. Like we focused on that during soundtrack, and it shows. Like
Yeah.
it's a little bit more together than the other stuff, which was pretty rowdy.
Now, prior
So
to COVID, you maintained a pretty busy touring schedule. So I guess in the early stages of lockdowns, it'd be understandable if you appreciated the break. But how long did it take before you started to get itchy feet about getting out there again?
well, not long, man. I mean, mainly financially, it was like, you know, I did get some help from the government here, but it wasn't nearly what I normally would make. And so like financially, I'm just like, oh man, like I don't have enough money saved up for this. So it got kind of scary there for a little bit, as I'm sure it did for a lot of people that are
Mm.
musicians. I mean, I know most people that have, 9 to 5 jobs were able to keep their jobs in some form or fashion, but for us it was like you literally lost your job. Like I couldn't go out and tour. So I got pretty nervous pretty quick, because I'm also kind of a little bit of I like to be prepared, and I like to, like, I don't know, I just kind of had a feeling there was something about it. I was like, I think this is going to be longer than 2 weeks. I don't think this is going to be 3 weeks. So I started kind of thinking, like, how am I going to, prepare and be ready for this in case it's like 9 months or a
Mm.
year. And then it became like a 2 year thing. And it's like, I mean, by that time I basically figured out my studio I've been developing it out, so it's become, I can record, you know, I am recording full bands in here, and so sort of transitioned into producing and doing a lot of studio sessions for other artists, and that was my saving grace during the quarantine. Um, so I'm really glad that I'd kind of already been setting that up, so it was like just in time that I was able to kind of make that jump over into producing records.
I'm guessing being a recording artist yourself would be a great advantage when you're sitting in the producer's chair.
It's a great way to get perspective, like, as to what it's like to work with people, because, like, on one hand, when you've only worked as an artist, you don't realize what it's like to be the producer that's recording you.
Mm.
And so when you've only been sort of like the high maintenance artist, you don't realize what it's like to be the person that's maintaining you and, like, helping you. And you kind of really quickly become aware of, like, selfish tendencies and, tendencies of taking things for granted and things like that. And, it makes me very aware of the people that are assisting me, just making sure that I'm, like, always treating them, the way I would want to be treated, kind of thing. Because once you've been on the other side, you're like, oh man, I don't want to be a difficult artist, because, like, I know what it's like to deal with a difficult artist. Like, that's me. So it's definitely kind of shown me, like, how to treat other people better, I think, in that sense. And it's also, in some ways, like, I still need help editing myself, because you don't really realize what it's like to have, somebody kind of help focus you when you're just wide open and you have, no boundaries.
Mm.
It's good sometimes to have an editor around that can tell you, you're kind of, hey, you're venturing out too far here, like, kind of bring it back and focus it. And in that way, I still work with guys. Like, there's a guy in California, Rob Schnaff, that I work with as much as I possibly can. He's one of my favorite producers and engineers of all time, and I'm lucky enough to get to have met him and worked with him. But I go to him for that kind of counsel, He's one of those guys that I trust. And so I don't try to take credit for doing everything. I definitely have a team of people that help me to do what I do. At the end of the day, you know what I mean?
Yeah. And just before I let you go, Jonathan, the current lineup of your band, it's not the original Northern Lights, is it?
No, it's not. We didn't make it, unfortunately, through the whole label split. It tore the band up, and everybody kind of went separate ways and started doing different jobs. And it's just been really tough to try to pull it back together once it was apart. And so I've just sort of transitioned into, working with new people. And the guys that I'm working with now, I've been with for the last 3 or 4 years, and it feels like a band. We share a house in Austin. The guys are on one side of the duplex, and I'm on the other, and it feels like a band, because we've been playing together for a long time. But it's a new group of guys for sure.
Fantastic. Hey, Jonathan, thanks for your time. It's been great catching up with you. Love your work, and looking forward to that next batch of songs when they're ready, and hopefully see you down here in Australia.
Hey, man, let me ask, though, how did you hear about this stuff? I'm really curious.
I'm always looking around online for artists.
You're digging, and you found it?
I'm a digger.
Were you finding it through, did you find it through another artist?
Probably did. I couldn't tell you who it was, but most likely that's usually how I find it. One artist links to another one, to another one, to another one. Yeah.
You go through because I've produced like Nikki Lane, and like worked with Paul Cawthon and stuff like that. So I don't know people sometimes how they find it, but that's really cool that you did. I mean, I don't think I have anything going on. I've never been to Australia, and I've never had any, that I know of. This will probably be my first radio there.
Cool. Oh, great. Oh, well, that's a badge of honor. I'll wear that proudly.
That's really cool. Are you playing the song too, or are you just are you just doing interviews?
Doing interviews, and I'll with this, I'll package this into a 2-hour special, and we'll play music right through your catalog.
Man, that is so cool. Thanks, man. It really warms my heart. Thanks for doing that.
No, we love your work, and look
Thanks,
forward to
dude.
the next part.
Hey, thanks a lot.
All the best. Cheers, Jonathan.
All right, you too, man. Thanks. Take care.
Bye.